Good day, Honors Biology students. Welcome to video lecture number 3. We're still in Chapter 11, Complex Inheritance and Human Heredity. And we finished up on slide 31 as we were finishing up I believe it was the third of 4 recessive genetic disorders, and that was Tay-Sachs disease. On slide 32, where we pick up today, it just has a larger image, just once again reminding us about the degeneration of neurons in both the brain and the spinal cord. Now, looking back quickly at slide 31, it mentioned how fatty acids are normally produced and then develop as the brain develops. Well, in a person with Tay-Sachs disease, that doesn't happen. So as a result, since those fatty acids don't dissolve, they then accumulate in the brain, which then leads to inflating brain nerve cells, which then, of course, leads to mental deterioration. In other words, the brain begins breaking down in the nervous system itself. All right, so let's move to our next and our final recessive genetic disorder, and that is galactosemia. Galactosemia is characterized by the inability of the body to break down galactose. In other words, because of this condition, the body is not able to break down galactose in part of taking in milk, and we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide, in slide 35. So in the body, when milk is digested, it is broken down into 2 sugars, that being galactose and glucose. Glucose you're most familiar with, and glucose is the sugar the body uses for energy, which circulates in the blood. And this is also the sugar that diabetics will check their blood sugar with. Now let's talk about the other sugar that, remember, that milk is broken into. So we've already talked about glucose. Now let's get into galactose. So galactose needs to actually be broken down by an enzyme, and the enzyme is called GALT, G-A-L-T. That enzyme breaks galactose into glucose. So people with this disorder, that being galactosemia, lack this enzyme, or if they have this enzyme, it is defective. In other words, it cannot be used. Looking at the image on slide 37, we can see obviously another effect of galactosemia, and that is the causing of eye cataracts. And if you look at the image, it gives you an idea of what I mean by cataracts. It's like they have a sheet, almost a circle if you notice, over the eye. Now, also as a result of the image there, you can see on the left-hand side, it's obvious that people with this condition should avoid milk and other dairy products just because of their inability to be able to break down that sugar as needed. All right, now we move into dominant genetic disorders. There's only 2 that we're going to cover, and that's Huntington's disease and achondroplasia. All right, so let's move into the first of those 2, and that would be Huntington's disease. Of the 2 of these dominant genetic disorders, Huntington's is the most deadly. Now, looking at the image on slide 40 on the right-hand side, you'll notice there is an image that compares a normal brain versus a person with Huntington's disease, and you can see what has already happened. Now, I don't know the exact timeline of how long this person's had Huntington's disease, but it's pretty scary to just see the effects of this condition. Here is also another image of comparing, once again, a normal brain and a person with Huntington's disease, and you can see that the brain is beginning to be degenerated. There's more black areas where brain matter is disappearing. Huntington's disease, this genetic disorder, affects the nervous system, which includes the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. Thankfully, this disease only occurs in 1 out of 10,000 people in the United States. I wouldn't wish this on anybody, but I'm just at least grateful that it's not as common as one might think, but still something to really be concerned about. Now, when do the symptoms for Huntington's disease show up? Well, on slide 42, it indicates, or I have placed there, that it indicates that the symptoms occur between the ages of 30 and 50, and that's when they'll first start appearing. Now, these symptoms, what do they include? Well, gradual loss of brain function, meaning that the brain loses some of the ability of certain things that the brain does as the major organ of the body it is. There is then uncontrollable movements and emotional disturbances. Here's just a larger zoomed in of that image from slide 42 on slide 43, just a bigger version of that so you can see. Here is one of the saddest things out there currently about this particular genetic disorder is while there are genetic tests to determine if you have the allele for this or if it's running in your family, whether you're a carrier, there is no preventative treatment or a cure out there. So keep in mind, if you guys would like to contribute to the science of genetics, this is somewhere that definitely needs study because you can imagine how it must feel for someone who gets this condition and knows there's really nothing they can do about it. Well, I'm going to go ahead and close the lecture here. The last 2 slides give some statistics and just an image. I know this is kind of sad ending on this for today, but just keep in mind that this just is a reminder of more we need to work on. And this is just another way you can contribute in science and helping others. Have a nice day, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next lecture tomorrow. Goodbye.